If you dream of your motorcycle, if your day isn't complete without some time in the saddle, if all you need is the open road and a full tank of gas, well, you've come to the right place, because this is Throttled, and it's starting now. Here is your host, Kevin McKinney.
Hello and welcome back to Throttled, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think we got a pretty good show for you today. We're going to skip our normal roundabouts and bring in returning special guest, Brian Honeycutt. And Brian, how are you doing today, mister? My friend.
Good. How you doing?
We're doing all right. We're doing all right. I hear through the grapevine that you've added a new steed to your stable, but not necessarily for you. And you also took a little demo ride that you wanted to share about.
Yeah. So last weekend, myself and Corey and Naked Jim from the Motorcycles and Misfits, we went for a little dirt ride, a little ADV ride off of Big Sur, overlooking Big Sur. So Corey was on the back of my bike, my girlfriend Corey. So, she's like, this is kind of cool. I'd like to have my bike. I don't like being on the back of yours. And she's got some motocross experience. So we started talking about a bike for her. So we was looking at the CRF 250 Rally. Thought that'd be a good bike. And I was looking at the prices. The prices are like $6,500, which seems a little steep for 20 horsepower.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a proper off-road bike. It's got a 21-inch front wheel and stuff. It's only got 20 horsepower. So she was asking, does BMW make anything? And I was like, I don't know if they make the 650. They make the 750, the 850. Then I was like, they make the 310. It's made by TVS over in India. It's 313 cc's and it makes about 34 horsepower. So I started looking into that bike, and they've got $1,000 off those things. So it puts the price, out the door at like $6,000. So it's retail is 58, 1,000 off 48, and then tax, title, and license puts you at about 6,000, which is cheaper than the Honda would be. Even a used one, the Hondas are hard to come by, in the same way with the WR 250R. So went and looked at them and started looking at reviews, and it's a pretty good bike.
So she's going to use it for off-road, and how does it work on road?
Yeah, it works good. It'll cruise at 75 miles per hour, no problem. Top speed of about 90. I've had it cruising at 75, and it's not too buzzy. The motor's balanced really well, and it's like the Yamaha motocross motors. If you know about those, the cylinders spun around backwards. So the intake's in the front, the exhaust is in the back, and the cylinders canted backwards instead of canted forwards. So it gives you a little bit bigger, longer wheelbase, which is kind of good. It's got, the swing arm's longer, so it's a little bit more stable. So it's not squirrely on the highway, and it makes 34 horsepower, which is the same as the 300 Ninja or the 300 Concourse or Versys. So, it seems pretty good. I mean, so she's going to use it for commuting for 40 miles away. Again, I definitely wouldn't recommend this bike for cross-country touring at all, but to do something like that, it's pretty good. And it's a pretty good 50-50 bike, so it works really good off-road. It's got more ground clearance than my GS. The suspension travels 7 inches, mine's 8 inches, and it's 360-something pounds, so it's pretty good. I mean, I could see myself, if I got out of cross-country touring, as buying something like that. Maybe even buying it for a little around-the-town bike, and it's a lot better off-road bike than my GS.
So, Brian, question for you: Have you in years past ever tried the 650 Serrano by BMW? Their single that they had. I think they stopped making them a few years ago. But curious as to what you thought, if you had the difference with the 310.
Yeah, I haven't rode that, and that's the Rotax motor, so I'm sure the motor is pretty good, and people have done some long distance stuff. So, but I've never had the option to ever ride one. So,
okay.
Now, did you consider the KTM 390?
So I looked at the KTM 390. It's about $2,000. Its retails about $800 more. Plus, there's no rebate on it, and they're just now getting the country, so they're hard to come by. Another thing is, the compression ratio is 12.5 to 1, whereas the BMW's 10.5 to 1. and I'm just looking at reliability, and I've raced extensively with guys with KTM 390s, and they have a head gasket problem because it's 12.5 to 1 compression ratio, and they've had a heat problem, and I think they've addressed it more. But they're both Indian motorcycles, and the KTM's a little bit more performance, but I think you sacrifice that in reliability, and I don't think she needs 40 horsepower. So.
Will since you said the 310's a little lower, will it take regular gas or still got to put in 93?
It says premium, but I would depend on elevation, right? But so yeah, I would have no problems running 87 as long as you don't hear any spark knock. But.
All right. So you also, while you were out gallivanting around, said you took a little demo ride on something more, I would say, less combustible.
Yeah, so I rode the new Zero SRF. So that's the newest one. So I've already rode the Energica, and I rode the other Zeros, the FXs and stuff, but I got a chance to ride that. And that bike is really refined. It's really close to the Energica, except for there's less noise because it's belt driven as opposed to the Energica's chain driven. So just in rider experience, I would buy the Zero. Plus I live, 20 miles from the factory. So that would be a no brainer. But so my experience with that bike is when you take off from a dead stop, there's a lot of intervention with traction control and stuff, but about maybe 100 feet off the start, it really, really gets into the power. Like so much, it kind of makes you feel that pit of your stomach sick kind of feeling. It gets that. And then about 80s when it kind of slows up quite a bit. So I don't think that it could beat an internal combustion engine bike, but it pulls hard. It's really surprising. And again, if you've never ridden an electric motorcycle, it's hard to even call it a motorcycle. It's not. It's the difference between a scooter and a motorcycle. It's not that it's better or worse. It's just not the same. It's just nothing about it seems the same.
Is the decrease at 80 because it has a governor on the RPMs?
No, I don't think so. It's just fighting wind resistance. That's when you start hitting a lot of wind resistance. That bike's not faired. I see they're releasing one with a fairing on it, but
yeah,
that a little bit. But yeah, it's a really good bike, and it's really cool for filtering. So I was doing some filtering through town, so it's really nice. Nobody hears you, so you can just scoot right up here. And one thing it does do that or doesn't do that the Energica does. The Energica does this thing when you get to about 1 mile per hour or so, the motor will stop, which will stop the motorcycle. And if you're not ready for it, you'll almost fall down, because the bike is heavy. It's 580 pounds or whatever. It's top heavy the way that battery is. But when it stops like that, and the Zero doesn't do that. The Zero seems to roll into a neutral.
Yeah. So how do you, with that, if the engine stops, how do you do like just a momentary pause and go? Where, I mean, like at any traffic stop or stop sign, you just kind of come to a momentary stop and then take off again.
Yeah, I think on the Energica you have to leave a little bit of throttle on, just kind of like a maintenance throttle type action. But on the Zero it doesn't do it. It kind of goes into a neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I noticed between the two.
So and the range? Do you know the range on the Zero?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it last week or the week before that we covered that bike?
Yeah, we talked about the new one, the touring, the one with the fairing, and that's supposed to, with the fairing, you're supposed to get something like a 10 or 15% increase in range, but I think that depends on you actually crouching behind the fairing when you're riding.
Yeah, that's what they were saying.
Yeah.
So cool,
great.
Man.
And you rode one other bike, right, Brian?
Yeah, I rode the new GS 1250.
Ah.
Oh, curious. Okay, so give us the scoop. What do you think compared to the 1200?
So my bike's 75,000 miles. It's been abused its life, and it's been all apart and back together. So it's kind of like, imagine if you left your house and you came back and somebody had totally redone your entire house. Same house, but everything's just so much better. That's exactly how it is. That 1250 The motor's a lot quieter because it's Euro 5 compliant, so there's no longer any valve noise in the bike, and the bike is just, it's razor sharp and smooth. You know, the quick shifter, I could take it or leave it. It's kind of clunky if you're not really full throttle on it, but that bike is really good. And again, to me, it's the best bike I've ever ridden. So, I mean, I don't know how people get on that bike and don't think the same thing, but we all like different things. But that bike, to me, is just super sharp and super crisp, and it does everything you need it to do. And I have no condemnations of that motorcycle at all. And I like the new TFT screen. I don't really care for them, but one thing nice about it, when you're going through the menu as you're riding down the road, you still have a speedo, which the Ducati Enduro, if you've ever rode one of those, when you scroll through the menu with that TFT screen, you lose everything. You don't have speedo anymore or anything. So it's kind of nice that they have that.
Yeah, I thought the TFT screen on the 1250s was very nice. Like I said, I kind of partial to some of the other kind of displays, but it did a good job in all lighting situations. I never really had a chance to I mean, it was kind of cloudy when I had it, but you know, it seemed to do well. And I did not have on polarized sunglasses, so I know that was some of those displays can cause a problem. But like I said, I hadn't.
Well, I've got the TFT on my 1200, you know, but I don't wear polarized sunglasses, so never really tried it with that. But I've never had an issue seeing it in any type of light, even direct sunlight. It's fine.
Yeah.
Right. And with my 1200 with the old analog gauge, it's so hard to read with that clicks and miles per hour. You can't really read it, and it's 10% off anyway. So I have the GPS on it, so I just use the GPS for the speed.
Oh yeah, the old analog gauge that I had on my my GSA, I could never read it. It's so small, it's ridiculous. I relied on the GPS.
Right.
You know, as approximation. What'd you think of the engine? Supposedly, you know, 8, 9, or 10 more horsepower and a dozen more foot-pounds of torque. You think you could feel it?
Yeah, I think I could definitely feel it.
And how about the bike's handling? Is it any different than the previous model?
No, it's got the automatic adjustable shock on it, so it sets the preload automatically, but I don't really care. So to me, it handles as good as they always have. I mean, those bikes handle incredibly well. That's the big secret with them.
Mhm.
You know, when I used to go to those schools and drag a knee and stuff, they're like, oh, look at that. I was like, yeah. You don't want to ride that because then you'll see the secret. The secret, that bike is really agile with that low center of gravity.
All right, Brian. Well, you're making me want to go give it a try just as a comparison, since I've got.
Look, if only do it if you can't afford it, because you won't bring it home. But if you can afford it, I would tell you what, because I mean it like I really liked the 1250 Adventure. Now, if I were to buy one, I'd probably just go with a regular 1250 for what my local riding and everything would be. Because it just, I don't know, I think I like the slightly smaller tank. Just as agile, I think, ultimately, after reconsidering some things after I did my talk about the Performance Center. But they're well built, nice to ride, very easily to maneuver. So,
you know, and I've rode the 1250 in the RT trim, and I didn't like that bike at all. Those bikes to me seem very cramped, so I didn't really even. I was so focused on maybe I'll get one of these bikes, but it was so cramped I didn't enjoy the bike. I didn't really think about the motor. But when I got on that GS, it's exactly like mine except for the TFT display, but the motorcycle was, you know, spot on. And again, it's like home, you know, to me, the controls are where they should be, or where I think they should be, and everything seems to fall right into place. So.
Very good.
Yeah, well, nice. Well, Brian, thanks for sharing that with us.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I know you got to bounce, man. You got some things to get done. Thanks so much for calling in again. You're always welcome. Hey, when you get your girlfriend out and you guys get some dirt on that thing, post some pictures up on the website and the Facebook page.
Sure will.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, man.
All right, guys. See you. Thanks.
Night, Brian.
All right. So,
Great.
welcome to Throttled, everybody. Glad you can make it. So appreciate Brian coming in and kind of sharing that. He's been able to make time for us the last 2 weeks, and that's very gracious of him. But as far as you guys, how much? I haven't gotten any riding done. How much riding have you gentlemen been able to get done?
Hey,
Larry, I'll
Tom.
let you go first.
Oh, you let me go first? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, I've been having, as I think I mentioned last week, I've been having some back problems, and they continue. I had a kind of a regression, and so I wasn't really comfortable riding this week. But yesterday, as my back had improved towards the latter part of the week, I decided to give it a try yesterday, and I rode out, went to the parking lot where I've been doing my practice, set up the cones, and the parking lot was emptier than usual, so I was able to set up a longer course for myself. And when I started, it was awful. I was missing cones. I was riding over them, and I tell the truth, I have a problem measuring out the course. I have a tape measure with me, and I try to measure it out, but somehow when I kneel down and eye my line of cones, they're all off. So the initial course that I set up was just too difficult for me, and so I kind of modified it. And by the end, I was able to do the course pretty much. I was able to completely do the course going one way and going the other way. Every now and then I would miss a cone. But towards the end, I started to get into, again, I got more relaxed, and I was able to swing, get into kind of a rhythm with the bike. And I was able to, sort of rotate the handlebars more easily. It was kind of part of the rhythm. So that's what I'm shooting for. I'd like to be able to translate that to my regular riding. So I did that for about an hour, and then I went on and did a circuit around Nicasio, which is a small town in West Marin, and then came back, and that was my riding for the week. Tom, how about you? Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, so I alluded to before we started here, just a little bit of errands during the week, but yesterday had not a lengthy ride, but about an hour ride out in the morning. So we had to attend our state of Georgia rider coach update was yesterday. So for those that don't know, for rider coaches, I think every state does this once a year. We've got mandatory training and basically administrative updates that we have to do, and we sit in a class for half the day, and then we go out onto the range. So where it was taking place was about 60 miles from my house. We started 8 o'clock, so I left my house about 6:30 in the morning. Temperatures were a nice 32 degrees when I left the house.
32?
It was 32. It's an all-highway run. Probably the last 15 miles, and I'm watching the temperature gauge, and every so often it flashes blue on me and tells me, okay, you're an idiot for riding. It's freezing cold out. It had dropped to about 26. So I didn't have, I was wearing my Aerostitch suit, so I just had jeans on. I didn't wear long underwear under that, which I normally do if I'm riding under 40, because I knew I was going to be sitting inside at a conference room for a while, for several hours. So I had that on, had heated jacket on, my heated gloves on, and then on my bike, I've got heated grips and a heated seat. I had everything maxed out. And was looking, at one point I tried to dial up my jacket even further and realized I had hit the end of the knob and was really wishing there was more turn to that knob. So I will say at 26 to 28 degrees, going 70 miles an hour, for an hour's worth of time, there was not enough heated gear on to keep me warm. It was cold even then. So that that was a little, I was ready for that ride to be over with. Were I to do that again, one, I'd have long underwear on because my legs were freezing after an hour at that speed and temperature. Two is I'd probably put some type of more layer over my heated jacket just to hold the heat in a little bit more. So that was a chilly ride, and I think it's been a while since I've done a sustained highway ride in the sub 30-degree temperatures.
Yeah, 26 degrees with the wind chill. You were down lower than that.
Probably wind chill was perhaps minus 20, minus 30, perhaps, maybe even more. I don't know whatever the calculation is, at 70 miles an hour sustained, what that might be.
The wind chill is too cold. It's just too cold. Sorry. Just let me just break that out there for you. You know something that somebody told me once, and I never tried this, but they said if you're ever out like that and you're really in a situation, you get caught, right? And it's just super cold, and the weatherman misses a forecast, and you're not wet, but you're just cold. They said to stop off at like a big truck stop, go and buy, because usually they have newspaper things there. Go buy some newspaper. Crumple it up, not really, really tight. Crumple it up to where there's some air pockets, and then put it like in your arms on the windward side. Put it on your chest on the windward side. And I don't know if you would need to do it underneath your heated vest or on top of your heated vest, but that it gives you more of it kind of works like a wetsuit theory, the air bubbles, your body's heating that other element's heating that. And so you've got a little bit more protection there than if you didn't, and if you just get caught. With the heated gear, with my luck, I'd somehow catch it on fire. But
just to say that what you're suggesting, Kevin, is what the Tour de France riders have been doing since time immemorial.
And I would like to say, it wasn't so much that I got caught out in this. I willingly went out into it knowing full well how cold it was going to be. So, but it was.
That's even worse. That's even worse, Tom.
It's one of those where you learn things. So I would do things differently, but I knew that I didn't dress super accordingly if I was going to be in that all day, because I knew I had to sit in a conference center for half a day. And then that afternoon, things had warmed up considerably. So my ride home that afternoon, it was 57, 60 degrees. Mm-hmm. So that was very warm. I do want to say, though, a couple other things that we did. So when as part of this update, we have to go out on the range and we do some exercises, and they went to a Harley-Davidson dealer to do the range exercise. And they actually have two ranges, so we split the group up. Within Georgia, we've got about 130 rider coaches, so 60 odd on one side, 60 on the other. And the curious thing is that you go through some exercises, or you're a student, and I did both. I taught one of the exercises, and I was a student on exercise 9, where you have to do the box and multiple U-turns, figure eights. So I did all this on a street 500, and you're doing all this with, 60 other rider coaches watching you and critiquing you.
Please tell me you didn't drop the bike.
I did not drop the bike, but oh my God, that is a god-awful bike.
Hey, that is what I teach on most weekends, dude.
I feel sorry for you that you've got to actually go and do your demos on that thing.
So let me tell you, the next time you do it, counterweight the mess out of it. I mean, really let the bike lean on over there and give it. If you try to creep through it, you're screwed. You gotta let it lean and go.
Which is more my style. My style in figure eights is I keep a fairly upright position. And
see, on the GS though, you lean it more than you think you do. You're just used to staying more upright and being more on top of the bike. To where honestly, I bet if I had to guess on your GS, if you were doing it, you probably almost, not so the students can tell, almost stand. Like if you were doing it in your GS, you make yourself light in the seat, lowering the weight down. You can't really do that on those bikes.
What was so bad? What was so bad about the street?
So
It sucks.
one, it's heavy as hell for a student bike. This thing has to weigh over 500 pounds. It just felt like it. It's a feet forward position, which I just hate riding in that position. It's just lumbering. I don't know. It's just a terrible bike to ride.
So if anybody's listening to this and you're going, and just because I have a lot of experience, because I went through the same thing a few years ago, the first time I got on it. They've got 3 seats on it, right? You got the shorty seat, you got the tall boy seat, and you got the standard seat. If I ride that and I put a tall on it, it makes the world of difference. If you put me in something else, I have to sit on the pillion and I can do it. But, or I sit like halfway on the pillion, halfway on the seat for the standard one. The shorty, I don't even try. But
yeah, I
you know,
have no idea what we were on.
Yeah, you probably had a standard seat. The tall boy, it helps out a lot because it just helps with the angles of everything for me. But yeah, it's a pain bike. It's honestly the worst option that could be out there for a training bike. Like if you think of all the bikes that you hear anybody ever training on, that is the absolute worst one.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that watching some of the other coaches that I know teach at Harley dealerships and ride this thing fairly often, they were doing a really good job with it. So I did the small box, half or so dozen times. I dabbed the foot once. I think it was on the far side, so I'm not sure if the other rider coaches saw me on it, but figure eights are not my best skill, so I figured that was okay.
Well, and you know, I tell people all the time, I'd rather you dab than drop it.
Yeah.
But just don't dab and drop it, and don't dab and then go over the lines. Pick one. Make one mistake, and then we can work on that one mistake. Because if you dab and go over the line, you know, one is usually causing the other. Like if you go on the line and then dab it, it's like, well, you went wide, then you realized it, and you try to pull it too sharp and undercut yourself, and so it's just make one mistake. So usually the first time they do that, beginning of the day exercise, now we don't really say anything. We're just kind of like, and then the next time they run it when they're on 14 at the end of the day, it's like, hey, pick one mistake, make that one mistake, and we'll fix that one mistake.
Right.
If you do both, then I'm only going to correct one mistake, and it's going to have to, once you get that one fixed, we may not have time to fix the other one completely to where the next thing we do is evaluation. And that's the second thing you do on the evaluation. So,
now are you talking about the beginner's motorcycle safety class or are these
BRC?
Yeah, no, this is the BRC, the very beginning. And so a 500 is the largest bike that's allowed by MSF. So
600, isn't it?
That was, I thought it was 5.
It's 599 cc's.
Is it?
Actual engine size. So if you get a 600 and the cc level is actually smaller than that, I think on the BRC.
Gotcha.
I believe that's right, because anything above a 600, you get to go to the 24-foot line instead of the 20-foot line, 22-foot line. Yeah.
Good. So the other thing I want to say, though, this was held at a huge Harley Davidson dealer. So I went inside, and sure enough, they had 2 live wires in stock. So first time I got to see a live wire in the flesh. Looked around on the bike. I actually threw a leg over, got to sit on the bike. They turned it on, got to play with the controls a little bit. Did not go out for a test ride, but at least got to sit on it. And that was kind of neat. What'd
you think?
Well, the one looks wise, it's a nice looking bike. So very nice. Seating
$29,000 nice?
No, I'm not going to talk about the price on it. No, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. But seating position, I was really surprised at how aggressive it was. I thought that it would be more of a standard seating position, and it was footrests were considerably far back. I mean, very close to maybe like a speed triple, almost to a sport bike. Ergonomics were tight. You were definitely leaned over a bit. For larger guys, it would need a taller seat. It was tight to fit on. But that was what surprised me the most with it, just how aggressive an ergonomic or seating position it was, that they went that far with it.
If you had wanted to test ride it, could you have?
I didn't ask, and they didn't offer. Normally it isn't. Now, I have not been. Here was the other funny. So I have not been in a Harley dealership in probably maybe close to 3 years. And another rider coach friend of mine was walking by, and she said something to me. It's like, "What are you doing inside of this dealership and on a Harley bike?" I says, "This is the bike. This is precisely why they built this bike, to get people like me who would never walk into a Harley dealership to come in to see this bike." And they're doing the same thing with the Pan Am and the Bronx that are coming out. I says, "Am I going to buy this? No, but it's the one thing that got me into the dealership to take a look at this thing."
Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll have a bunch of other bikes that will attract people into the dealerships. Their life depends on it. Yeah.
It was a neat bike. We fired it up. It had that particular bike had, I think, 81% battery left. It said on the gauge, and it estimated 85 miles left. Is what the readout said.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
A little slim there.
Well,
okay.
let's do this. Let's take a minute to thank our Throttled crew members.
Well, wait a minute, Kevin. You didn't talk about your ride.
And so going to the Throttle crew members, with all the rain and stuff, and then I've had some family stuff this weekend and next weekend. Last weekend I got out to go riding for most of the day, and I knew this weekend and next weekend it's not an option. So we'll cover that. But
bummer.
On to the more important people on the list other than myself. We got our Throttle crew members, right? Robert, Autumn, Jerry, John, Rodney, Nick, Don, Alex, David, Ralph, Stephen, Lloyd, Michael, Dan, TC, Jorge, Randy, Sean, James, Tyler, Paul, Jeff, and Chuck. Thank you all for supporting the show. They help keep the lights on. They kind of help keep going on with what's been going on with the show. And luckily with some new additions, we may be expanding and going with some of the paid services for SoundCloud. So I know some people have been asking about that. We may be signing up for SoundCloud, using some of the funds generated here and being able to publish on SoundCloud. Unfortunately, that's not a free thing to publish on. So I appreciate everybody's support and allowing us that opportunity to spread the show to other people that may just prefer that platform. So, all right. So let's. How do you join the Throttle crew? Right. Well, the best way and the easiest way, go to throttledpodcast.com. Scroll near the bottom, and you'll see a Patreon logo. And on that, you'll be able to fill it out and get signed up, and we would really appreciate it. So if you get something out of the show, if you think that the show brings a little bit of value to you, just consider supporting us. That's all we can ask, and we would appreciate any support that you might be able to give, $1 to whatever you feel like. So anyway, thanks everybody that is currently supporting the show, and I guess we're going to go ahead and move on back to it. Now, I did have an interesting email, and in that email, I need to pull it back up because I just closed it, but I think I got it right here. This came in from David. David said he's 21 years old guy who fell in love with riding, same as us. And he's been riding for about a year now, starting on a 2014 Ninja 300 and recently jumped up to a 2008 ZX-10R. He loves his bike to death. He treats it with respect, always warms it up before it goes anywhere. Recently did the coolant flush, brake fluid flush, adjusted the chain, new clutch cable. The point he's trying to make is that he maintains his bike pretty good and really cares after it, right? He's heard rumors that some sport bikes only last around 50,000 miles and may need rebuilds at 25,000 miles. He's currently at 9,000 miles on his ZX, and he's scared of putting on too many miles, but he can't resist riding it. It's something that always runs through the back of my head when I ride. He's constantly always looking at the odometer. His question is this true, and what should I do to stop worrying? Well, first off, I'll say this. Just don't worry about it, right? If you're out there worrying about that, then you're really not truly enjoying your ride, right, David? So just ride your ride, enjoy it. And, as long as you're taking care of the bike, ride the ride you want to ride. Put as many miles as you can put on it. Have these things happen to bikes? Yeah, I'm sure, right? We've got Rodney on. He's our kind of independent mechanic, I guess you would say, and I'm sure he'll chime in here in just a few minutes about that. But from my knowledge, I know people on sport bikes that have 100,000 miles on the bike, right? And you're putting on a pretty decent amount of miles on the bike, and I don't know how many it had when you picked it up, but just go out there and ride, man. Put as many miles as you want to on it. Take care of it. I would say follow the manufacturer's specs for maintenance and preventive maintenance. Adjusting all your valves and just follow what the manufacturer says to do. They've got a pretty good idea on what to keep that up with. So, guys, you got anything to follow up with David on that?
Yeah, well, my thought about it is that I read that somewhere too recently, actually, and but I think that may be related to the fact that sport bikes may be more likely to be used on track days or just revved higher and more frequently than other bikes. So if you don't take it to the edge a lot, then my guess is that they'll last just the way other bikes do.
Yeah, so Rodney says the ZX10, not having the crap run out of it and maintained, it should last fine. And that's the thing. If you abuse a motor and constantly are bouncing it off the red line and not really taking care of it, that's going to happen, right? I mean, it would happen to any engine. But for the most part, just ride your ride, take care of the bike. If you treat it like it's supposed to be treated, you should be fine on most bikes. I mean, there's a couple engines out there that are old racing engines that are on the streets that, it's almost like a dirt bike, right? Every 15 hours, you've got to change it. Even on the high end, some of these engines are only made to last one race. So the ZX isn't one of those. So enjoy it, have fun. All right. You got anything to add, Tom?
No, I think it's the same thing. It's like, don't be afraid to ride it how you want to ride it. Keep up general maintenance, and even 50,000. That's an average. I'd be surprised at that. And even if you're riding 10,000 miles a year, that's 5 years from now. So what are you going to worry about it for 5 years? Ride the bike.
Yeah,
Enjoy it.
if it's a situation where you're like, I don't want to ride the bike because I don't want to put miles on it, well then just sell it. Honestly, if you're not
part of riding.
Yeah, if you're not going to enjoy it when you're on it, just get rid of it. But it sounds like you really love riding and you love the bike. So get out there, twist the throttle, take care of it, and treat it right, man.
It's a machine. It's something's going to break on it eventually. Why worry about it? Deal with it when it happens.
Yep. All right. Let's jump back into the Harley thing. So, and a little context, right? Last week or the week before last, we talked about how Harley Indian had the promotion like, hey, coming at the Challenger Challenge, right? They, they wanted to have a Challenger versus a Road Glide and kind of a head-to-head where you could ride them one and ride the other and tell which one's better, right? That was kind of the gimmick they put out there. So don't, that's Indian did that, right? And we were just like, hey, it's very victory-ish. And I remember us talking about that and what victory used to do and everything. So that they did that. Well, Harley came back, and this is hilarious. And they took out an ad, and what was it that they took the ad out in?
Well, they actually the Harley disavows having taken the ad. It was some advertising agency that Harley uses that
Ah,
came out with the ad. But we're all speculating that
yeah.
Harley is behind it.
Yeah, I'm sure Harley or some deal, something. But the ad has at the very bottom an image of a road glide, and it says, "Honestly, now, did you spend your youth dreaming about someday owning a Polaris? A Polaris?" And it said, "We've been building riders, not gimmicks, for over 115 years, with 700 plus U.S. dealer partners and category-defining motorcycles. There's never been a better time to join the tribe." And I can't read the was it Toad Challenge? Was it
Accepted.
accepted?
Accepted.
We've been carrying your weight. We've been carrying your weight for a long time. So that to me is absolutely hilarious, right? I mean, it's supposedly unofficial, like Larry said, but even if it's not quote unquote sanctioned, it it makes a good point. It's just like, yeah, I mean, not to take anything away from Indian, but they specifically called out Polaris on that and not Indian to, recognize what you're getting, is what Harley is trying to say. But I think it's very, very interesting.
Perhaps trying to aim at people that may not realize Polaris is an American company as well.
Well, I think it's
You
more
think?
of people usually when they're dreaming of motorcycles, they would say, "Hey, I want a Harley. That's my ultimate goal is to get a Harley." Right? That's how Harley at least pictures it or phrases it. Right? Nobody when they're a kid, well, one because the company didn't exist, says, "I want a Polaris motorcycle." The people actually making this are the same people who started making snowmobiles and side by sides and four wheelers and have only been making motorcycles for, and time wise compared to Harley, a very short amount of time. So,
Yeah, I think they're trying to, saying that you want a Polaris has no panache, it has no tradition, so it doesn't mean anything to. So Harley is kind of trying to emphasize that Indian is made by and owned by this firm that has no real, creds as a motorcycle company, whereas they've been doing nothing but motorcycles since the beginning.
mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
So I find it very funny. I'm waiting to see where the next step goes.
yeah, well,
We'll have to see how because the Indian tour is going on. They're stopping at I think I looked at the map, about a dozen cities around the U.S. So that you can try the Indian Challenger. And they are bringing along. They have a side by side. They have a Harley Road Glide, so that you can try both of them side by side. So Indians promoting giving them a try. Try it,
It'd be interesting
see what you think.
to see what they would say if you say, "Well, I prefer the Harley." Which they're going to get a ton of that, right? They're going to get a ton of road glide people ride up on their road glides, just so they could say, "I prefer the Harley."
Yeah,
so
it's not an ad put to me because I look at it as like, okay, I never dreamed of owning a Harley, and the whole thing of there's never been a better time to join the tribe. Well, that's precisely why I would never buy a Harley, is I don't want to join any tribe. But that's just me. So what can I say?
well, a lot of Harley's appeal is based on the fact that you are joining the Hog, club, and they have hog-based groups all over the country. But it's
I'm
interesting.
not going to point out the BMW in his driveway. Just saying.
BMW what?
In his driveway.
No, don't point that out.
Yeah. Or the fact that I saw it at Starbucks the other day. Just.
Hey, I like Starbucks.
All right.
But
what were you saying, Larry?
I was going to say what will be interesting to see. I don't know what this taco truck challenge is, but Harley says the challenge accepted.
I think they tow a taco truck or something like that.
Well,
I
that's what
don't
it-
remember the exact details. Hold on, let's see if it's in this other article here.
Well, it isn't. It's a video. So
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that is either. I'm sure we'll get all sorts of video and after thoughts on it.
yeah.
So now we did get a first look at the 2020 Harley Davidson CVO Road Glide for $41,000, mind you. And you know they take a few bikes every year, slap a CVO on them, spiff it up, put some new things on it, and charge over $40,000 for it, right? And so there's the Tri-Glide at $48,900, the Limited at $44 and change, and the Street Glide at $40 and change, are what they're doing for 2020. And so let's see here. That's an old joke. Trying to get down to some of the specs that I saw earlier. Okay. So it's they've got the high performance Screaming Eagle heavy breather intake for better airflow. 2-liter twin produces 125 pound-feet of torque thanks to the revised intake. It also has a more aggressive camshaft because, hey, dyslexia, camshaft. And the horsepower output, they are holding tight to their chest for now. 21-inch fronts and 18-inch rears, split 7-spoke wheels. And they've resculpted some of the bodywork and whatnot. They say that the fairing will give you plenty of wind protection from gusty breezes, and they also have heated hand grips.
Ooh.
Blah, 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 blah. Daymakers, which...
All right, so the standard Road Glide goes for about 28. And that's with the 114 engine. You could probably buy, I forget, it's a stage 2 or a stage 3, spend maybe $3,000 on the engine and probably get it better than a 117. So that gets you up to 31, perhaps 32. The only other difference is paint. You're paying $9,000 for a hell of a paint job. Really?
Really?
Well, I mean, you've got the resculpted. They've changed some of the aerodynamics and sculpted some things in there.
Not for the
airflow.
CVO. I think that it's the same as the other. They haven't changed any of the ergos. You're getting paint in the bigger engine.
Well,
Right.
they said that they changed.
41.
Well, not ergos. They've changed. They've resculpted some of the fairings and stuff like that, and the bags and stuff. And you probably got a better, so you've got the wireless headset linked with the boom box, system that they have in there, which uses 600 watts of power with bi-amp speakers and integrates a 6.5-inch touchscreen with navigation and Apple CarPlay.
Ooh.
All right. Yeah. All right. So let's talk.
Not to mention the defensive.
Wait. Let's
hold on.
talk about
I got more stats
Tom
for you.
is speechless.
I got more stats. You got
Tom
the
is
reflex
speechless.
defensive rider system using cornering, ABX, and traction control, which I have to admit is probably a pretty penny to put on there. Maybe not $9,000 worth, but it cost a little bit.
Yeah, what do you say to that, Tom? Yeah.
Well, no, my whole thing is that I never understood the speakers on a motorcycle. So I was at a motorcycle show a few weeks ago, and I sat on the Challenger, and they got a massive fairing and these massive speakers facing you, and there's speakers in the back. And I went over to the Harley, and they got the same thing, the massive fairing and these massive speakers sitting at the back. You're wearing a helmet. How do you hear this music? Why not just put a Bluetooth headset on? You got the speakers right in your ear. You could hear 10 times better. Can you really hear out of these speakers once you're going 60 miles an hour?
Surprisingly, yes. When
Really?
I was in Vegas, I was on the Indian road.
Was that
Roadmaster.
a phrase there?
Huh? No. I think it was the Indian Roadmaster. It was one of the Indian Chieftain or Roadmaster. I can't remember. I think it was Roadmaster. And, it had speakers, and I had on a 3/4 helmet with the shield and turned the speakers to about 30% of what they would do. And I could hear just fine going down the road at interstate speeds. to the point when I got off the interstate, I had to turn them down because I thought they were too loud.
And so could everybody around you get to listen to all of your music?
Oh yeah, I mean it was the only station I could find was like a classic rock, so there's a lot of AC/DC and stuff like that going on. So, you know, that.
All right. So let's look
That's
at the other thing
that-
on this.
That's part
This
of the
is-
appeal, Tom.
Yeah. See, I guess that's part of being part of the tribe. That's what the tribe does.
You go down the road blasting the music, and then when you stop anywhere, you got 2 or 3 bikes blasting music, and that's part of the
And
appeal.
we all want to listen to whatever you're listening to,
do,
you know, because loud music saves lives. So the other thing, did you get to this one, Kevin? It's 800 curb weight, 893 pounds.
Well, I mean, I look at pretty much all the large cruisers, right, and baggers. Sorry, all the large baggers are between like 9, between right at 1,000 to 800. That 200-pound range, depending on what they've got on them and fairings and stuff, from the Street Glide, the Road Glide, up. Then you jump over to Indian, from the Chieftain to the Roadmaster. I mean, Roadmaster's over 900, right? Roadmaster, is that the right bike? For some reason, my brain just doesn't like that phrase.
Yeah, it probably is on the Indian side. As well. Yeah.
But yeah, it's.
And,
Honestly, I'm kind of just like, hey, it's under 900, which, it's like, I mean, trust me, it's not a bike I'd ever want to pick up, but, that's just kind of the understood. I mean, when you have these huge motors and you've got all this other stuff to stop it with and all this frame to support it with, and I mean, because honestly, the boxes don't weigh that much because they're fiberglass, right? So the luggage boxes aren't, 30 pounds of that weight is probably all those are. Most of it's the motor, the exhaust, and all the metal to keep the bike holding together. So, huge tanks.
Yeah, but for 41, you get that. It says premium sand dune, a sort of satiny eggshell with a pearl top coat.
Hey, look, I'll say this. While I don't like all of Harley's colors, they do a good job when they do their paint.
They do.
The paint really is properly applied, and it's and you pay for it. I mean, they do a good job I give Harley
approximately 9,000 to 10,000. You're paying for it, yeah.
And we talked about there were these other additional features, Tom, that are also into that. But you will pay for it if you dent your fender and you have to get it replaced.
Yeah, you'll definitely pay for it again for that much.
Yeah.
All right.
I got to test for that.
So that's that. I think we've beat it into the ground enough. Where are we at? We're at.
I could do it some more.
And just because
when we have these Harley conversations, we've got to have Ted on at some point so we can he can at least stick up for the brand from his side.
Well, I was into Harleys for several years.
This is true. That's
Well,
but you were not
Harleys.
dyed in the wool. You learned your lesson and you've come to the light.
Well, I think I will say that there are pluses and minuses. Let's put it that way. And there's something about the culture that's very appealing, and there are problems with it as well. And the same thing with the bikes. The bikes have some really, are spectacular in some ways and are deficient in others. And it's not black or white.
So here's the thing: as a company, Harley's changing, right? They really recognize not everybody wants to be, as Ted calls them, road pirates. Yeah. And they're making efforts to be more widely accepted. In that same vein, they've got to be doing something right because they're still here 115 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Harley is a crap. That's not true. Harleys may not be the bike for you, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to argue. They're not the bike for me. If you gave me a Harley, would I be like, oh, no, please take it away? Absolutely not. I'd find room for it and happily ride it from time to time. Might actually be my commuter bike or something like that. I don't know. But it's not the bike that I sit up when I'm like, I want a new bike. That's not what jumps in my head. And there's been times, though, since I've been doing the show that I'm just like, maybe having a bagger for X and Y wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. You know, in fact, I was just thinking yesterday when I was riding my Versus that I kind of miss my Harley.
Yeah. I mean, there's things about them that are appealing, right? Just like there's things about any bike. So, you know, to each their own. And we pick on Harley, we pick on BMWs, we pick on everything but Yamahas.
And Kawasaki's.
Well, I mean,
Go Vespas.
poor Kawasaki's. It's really not fair. So we just leave them alone. You know. Yeah. Anyway, so let's change the topic. We've been talking a lot about Harley and Indian, and we've talked a lot about BMW and everything. And so I'm going to get to Larry's passion. He's going to be giving a TED talk soon on the subject.
I am.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And so there's a 2021 Honda scooter that I think the ADV 150.
Yeah.
What's the news on that guy?
Well, you know, somewhat surprisingly to me, it turns out that Honda's gotten CARB certification for the ADV 150.
For those of us not living in California, that is
It's the California
Air Resources Board.
Exactly. So it suggests that Honda is planning to market this bike in the U.S., California, of course, and the rest of the U.S. And this is a bike that has a 150cc engine, 14 horsepower, and 10 pounds of torque. So, and they don't expect this to change much for the American market. So, in the Indonesian version, they mention that this has an idle stop system that turns off the engine when the scooter is sitting idle, similar to what I've experienced with our Prius and other American cars, which have this. But they said that this feature may not come to the U.S. version. So it's a bike that comes in the Far Eastern version. It has ABS. They say there's no guarantee the American version will, but I would pretty much guarantee you that it will. I just don't think that it would appeal to the American market without ABS. It's got a 30-inch seat height and so on. The thing that surprises me is that Honda has a larger version of this, the ADV X, I think it's called, and this would be a bike, I think, with a larger displacement engine. I think it's a 500cc engine.
750 is the big ADVX. Yeah.
So I think that would appeal more to an American market than this 150.
But wouldn't it be harder to get the approval for the larger engine?
That I have no idea.
They're sold in Europe today, so they're meeting Euro standards.
If the Euro 5's compatible, it certainly would be CARB compatible. But maybe they're anticipating that there's a growing urban market for smaller displacement scooters, and if so, more power to them. I do like the ADV design. It's a kind of it makes it look like the bike could actually do a little bit of dirt as well as staying on pavement. So especially the ADVX. So I think that's.
So in the chat, Sonics is pointing out, this is basically the PCX. Underneath, it's a PCX 150, and that's true. But it does have a different suspension. It's lifted up a little bit higher, and it is a quote unquote, yes, an off-roadable scooter. You can take it down a gravel road or a fire road, probably fine. But yeah, this is kind of like the little cousin of the ADV 750 that I know a lot of scooter aficionados have been clamoring to get into the U.S. here.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of disappointing. But again, maybe they're trying to appeal to the a more urban commuter market with this bike, and we'll see how it does.
Yeah, a
So,
little more aggressive styling to it. It's a little taller and it's got some more aggressive tires to it. And I think it's a 14-inch front, 13-inch rear, so a little bit larger tires. I'm not sure if the current PCX has the same tire setup, but certainly a little higher suspension on it.
hmm
I'm just waiting for like motorcycle.com to actually take one of these and try to do a actual like ADV road.
So they have. I don't remember the publication, whether it was motorcycle.net or if it was Bike Magazine from the UK. Have taken the 750 version and thrashed it off road, and it
Well,
did
and I
surprisingly
think I've seen
well.
that one. I want to see this one. Because before, I
Hey,
mean,
it
it's just
goes-
like, hey, here's my ADV bicycle. Well, it's a mountain bike. I mean, it's just kind of like
I
go
think our
ADV in
two
front of
boys.
it, and it says like, ooh, ah.
I think our two boys in the long way up just proved you can take anything off road.
there you go. Well, those bikes were
and I'm not
those bikes were
doubting that.
modified. Those bikes were modified. They're
Yeah.
not your standard life.
True. Now it depends on what your definition of off road is. If it's just a dirt road, a smoothish fire road or light gravel, yeah,
You could take
it'd
you could
be
take
interesting.
anything on that. You could take your Harley on that.
Yep.
And they have.
All right.
So-
Hey,
So
what's in the?
just
Go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to say just to add to our scooter news, because I know that we have a large number of people that are interested in scooters. Suzuki is also the latest of the big manufacturers to develop an electric range of scooters and motorcycles, and their launch is scheduled for 2021 in India. And it's interesting because the article mentions that Husqvarna and KTM are probably going to be introducing electric bikes in the Far Eastern market as well, and India. Triumph is also expected to follow suit. So, again, the electrics are coming, and Suzuki recently confirmed that it will be slimming down its Bergman line, potentially paving the way for new models that will be electric. So, electric motorcycles, yeah, but probably even more so electric scooters are going to be much more predominant in the market in the coming years.
Yep, and for those that may not know, the Bergman line of the Suzukis are maxi scooters by size wise, come in a 200, a 400, and a 650.
Thought
And
they
in
had
the past,
1,000 out there too.
now they max out at the 650,
Okay.
and previously I used to own the 400 and the 650, and they were nice riding bikes. Larger wheels, 15-inch wheels. The 200 was just brought into the U.S. a couple of years ago, but yeah, I've heard rumors that they were pulling those bikes, not introducing any new model year. So this could be the new way for them with the
Yeah.
larger maxi scooters.
Yeah, that Bergman is like a limousine.
Oh, it was yeah, really nice. I mean, you had electric mirrors that folded in so that if you were in tight places, it had electric grips. It had multiple throttle response. You could even manually shift it if you want. It would max out at about 115. Not that I would know that personally. I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a nice machine.
All right. So, moving on. Do we have anything in the paddock this week?
Well, we do have some, a little that I thought people who are following MotoGP would be interested in. For one thing, it was announced that Marc Marquez signed a contract with Honda Repsol. That's no surprise, but it's a 4-year contract. So it's a 2020 to 2024 contract. Now, 4-year contracts in MotoGP is very unusual. Usually, the rule of thumb for contracts is 2 years and sometimes 1 year. So 4 years means really that Marquez and Honda are there to stay, and Marquez has an awful lot of say in what they do with the MotoGP bikes. Honda listens to him, and they. This contract, I think, reflects the fact that their whole program, is heavily dependent on the input that they get from Marquez. So that was one piece of news that I thought was interesting. The other thing that people are talking about now is that the coronavirus outbreak that's going on may affect the start of the MotoGP season. The MotoGP race is scheduled in Thailand, and the issue is not so much the Thai race, but if the Thai race is canceled because of the coronavirus, this may seriously affect the. Actually, it may affect either the U.S. race in Austin either way, because if the race in Thailand goes on, then there's going to be a concern about the riders being in Thailand and then coming into the U.S. because the U.S. has currently imposed restrictions on anyone traveling from Thailand because of the virus. They have a quarantine. So if the Thai race is canceled because of the coronavirus, no problem, because nobody's going to go to Thailand. But if the Thai race goes on and the riders go into Thailand, then there's a risk that they may be barred from coming into the U.S., or they may be required to go into quarantine, which would then basically put the kibosh on the race. So we don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it's definitely something to be watched and something of concern. And the last piece of news that I have is that the motorcycle racing testing is going on at Qatar currently, and the results are very interesting. Both the Yamaha and Suzuki have really been dominating these testing trials, with Quartararo this weekend being on top by the second day of testing, and Vinales, I think, was third today. Suzuki also has been very fast in these preliminary trials, with both Rins and Mir finishing in the top, I think, 5 or 6 in the race. I think Mir was second. And also, the new Ducati GP20 with a more powerful engine, believe it or not, is really being described as a rocket down the straightaways. Maybe easily the fastest bike in the field by a considerable margin. Honda seems to be having trouble with their front end. The Marquez has gone down, and so have some of the other riders testing the bike on the track. Nobody has been injured, but it's still an issue for Honda. Aprilia is looking stronger this year in the testing, so there may be another manufacturer that's going to be pushing into the top 10, and that would, of course, be very interesting and a lot of fun. So tomorrow's the final day of testing in Qatar, and look forward to seeing how that works out. But I think this year is going to be an interesting year for the MotoGP.
Cool, man. As always, you got your fingers on the pulses of all the races and stuffs.
Oh, I should mention that there's no news on flat track that's worth reporting. So I'll keep you posted.
All right. Well, I think that's going to be all we got for today's show that we're going to talk about. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Throttle Show, Instagram Throttle Show, and Facebook Throttle Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube right now, thank you guys so much for watching on YouTube for the live stream. You can go to our Facebook page and see where we post episodes up there and get the link to that particular show. You can always watch them after we air them live. And don't forget that we do do the YouTube broadcast Sunday night, 7:30 Central, 5:30 Pacific. And 15 to 30 minutes before the show, I start the stream. There's a nice little intro video that plays until we start the show around 7:30. And, that's how you could do it and see the show. That's always great to have you guys on. Now, if you are watching it, help us out. Click the like button. If you liked what you see, you plan on coming back, give us a like on those episodes. It really helps us to potentially show up more. And if you're interested to get, just to kind of help us out, hit subscribe. Subscribe to it. You'll be able to watch it anytime. It'll be there in your subscriptions for whenever you have time to watch it. And if you want to get a notification, click the bell next to the subscription button, and that'll work out the same there. So if you're not subscribed, please, we ask you that you do. So if you've watched it and you like it, subscribe. It'd be awesome. Outside of that, I believe that's all that I have, except for sending in the emails and mailbag and all that good stuff. If you've got a question that you'd like for us to share on the show or just talk about on the show, write us feedback at throttledpodcast.com or go to the website, throttledpodcast.com. Click on the contact tab. We get that in the same mailbox. All right. So, Larry, I'll let you sign off first, my friend.
Okay, well, I was I'm looking. I can't find that thing in the chat that Ferris or somebody said about they get Dopplered country music from the Harley groups that go by. Maybe it was Rodney, but I thought that was entertaining. So people have fun. Riding season is coming upon us, so make sure you get out and ride safe, and of course ride your own ride.
Tom, my good buddy, my fellow coach, how's it going?
Riding season is every day of the year. Remember, it's transportation, not a toy. Go out and ride it.
I don't know, man. I like treating it as a toy a lot of the times. I gotta admit, it's a lot of fun as a toy. So anyway, well, whether it's a toy or your transportation and you're out there riding, please ride safe, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. See ya. All right, everybody in the live stream, thank you so much for being in. As always, you are wonderful people, and I appreciate all the likes. The more the merrier. Thank you very much for that. It's good to see some old faces come back in and get involved in the show again. Glad to see a few of you back this week, so it's good to see. The regular show, I got 2 episodes, one published today, one will go out tomorrow, and so I've worked through all the bugs. I'm able to get things plodded along, so hopefully by next weekend, which I'll have to do it all this week because Saturday and Sunday I'm gone, I'll be back though, and in time for the show, but we'll get kind of caught up. If not, have at least 1 or 2 of those extra episodes out. Get caught up here and get current, which has been a long time since we've been current, and really appreciate everybody. Some of you I reached out to get some tips and stuff, so thanks so much. So I guess I'll go ahead and end the stream now. Thank you all so much. Thanks, everybody. You're always great. You're always wonderful, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.